as part of like our onboarding. How reliant are you on ads to drive sales? That is a very big assessment. I don't care what size your brand is. If you've been advertising and your product is still heavily reliant on ads to drive sales, that means you don't have enough sales velocity to increase organic ranking.
Let's say it's a stainless steel garlic press. It's not super generic, but it's also not super long tail. It's in a healthy middle of search volume and relevancy. If you're getting clicks for that and you're converting below average, then something is off.
Hey everyone, welcome back. I have a super treat for you. I'm joined by Daniel Fernandez, CEO and founder of AMZ Clever. And today we are going to attempt to peer through a crystal ball and go through the changes that we're seeing now that we're getting into the start of 2023. And really, as we get into kind of this more competitive landscape when it comes to Amazon and selling on Amazon, what kind of brands do we really see being able to weather this, current economics being what they are? I'm sure we'll get into all of that. But Daniel, really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, Elizabeth, it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, let's talk about the elephant in the room, right? What's going on Amazon? What are some of those changes? And who will be successful this year? Who we see will be the winner?
Yeah, hopefully we can give some of the brands listening some insight as to what we're seeing. But of course, first, I'd love for you to be able to quickly introduce yourself, give a little bit of a backstory, who you are, how you are very much qualified to have this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So my company is called AMZ Clever or AMZ Clever, depending on where in the world you are. And I've been in the game for about 8 years. And I started as a seller a very short amount of time. At that point, I had left job. I was based in San Francisco and the product business was great, but the cycle was a little bit too long for me. So I decided to shift to an agency, which has pros and cons like any other business, but I never looked back. Really focused on Amazon management, and that one client led to the other, and then that brought me to China. I actually moved to China, lived there for about 3 years, and then when the pandemic happened, escaped China, went to Bali, Indonesia, and kept growing. We worked with a lot of brands. My time in China was very interesting because I worked with brands over there, ended up working with even more Western brands that just happened to be going there for events. But I got a very nice taste of the way Chinese sellers, Chinese brands were doing Amazon, were approaching Amazon. Yes, I learned some of the black hat stuff. Not that I practice it, but I did get to learn that. So that was a very interesting experience. Now I'm based in the States again, and it's been quite a journey. So happy to share some of the things that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know when we had first talked, you definitely have a very colorful backstory in an amazing way, a lot of different experiences. And so I'm really excited to dig into this topic with you and somebody who has just that broad of is super cool. And as you're like thinking like, okay, 2023, I don't know about you, always for all of our brands across the spectrum, as we come off of kind of the Q4 high and we get into the start of Q1, any brand who has not been through this cycle before, you'll notice it in all the forums popping up, all the Facebook groups, everybody's, my sales are down. Why are sales down? Like December 26th, everybody's asking you about sales drops. And we know that that's expected. Like those of us who manage brands, we do certain things to kind of like optimize for not having crazy high bids when conversion rates drop, like those kind of things. But I have to say, like going into this Q1, and you were saying right ahead of the call, the Q4 season was much bigger than Q4, Q3, typically speaking, and that's to be expected. But there definitely was, I don't know if it's added competition or just shopper, I don't know, maybe not being as primed to spend just given the current economics. What were you seeing?
Yeah, what we saw is probably one of the worst Octobers compared to previous years. We saw some of the best Novembers ever. Like this Black Friday, Cyber Monday was the best, at least for what we saw. And then a little bit of a mediocre December. And we could talk about why that's the case. There's many, but at the end of the day, there's the macro component, economy and whatnot, and then there's a little bit of the micro. We saw on Black Friday, for example, we do full management. So we run some sales, some discounts on products. And we saw insane spikes, 8 like average, like trailing daily sales, which is higher. It's been higher than previous Prime Days and Black Fridays. We saw a lot of just drove, and I'm talking like 20% off, maybe in some cases 15, 10% off. Not as steep, which makes us think that it's shoppers maybe have been a little bit on the waiting game,
Yeah.
waiting for those sales to come through. When they came, they just unleashed, right, and started shopping. Then December though was like usually December is also as good as November, if not better, but it was, but compared to previous years, not as strong. Another reason we think that's the case is because of oversupply in the market. We see a lot of brands, and the smart listeners out there know that there's ways to find out the stock
Yeah.
of your competitors on Amazon. We just saw crazy numbers, and there's no way. Why do you have so much stock? And then that led to competitors driving steep discounts in December, and the brands that could match that did okay. The ones that didn't really sell as much as I think they could have. But the silver lining, for everybody listening, the silver lining that we see in 2023 is that there's overstock in the market. A lot of these brands are selling through those stocks, and they're not restocking. A lot of brands are actually not replenishing products. So when this situation stabilizes, I think it's gonna improve conversion rates for many of these niches, right? This is a parallel to whatever is happening with inflation and all the economical stuff.
Yeah, and that's a really good point about the overstock. And I would agree. We have a lot of our sellers dealing with overstock, or we have these products we need to move. And then honestly, a lot of those combining the overstock with the inventory restrictions has been a really difficult thing to navigate, because some of the conversations I'm sure you probably have with brands are, okay, so we have overstock in this product. Maybe this is not our best mover. So do we almost liquidate, or we sell at lower prices, or maybe we push advertising a little bit higher so we're maybe a bit lower on profits or break even, just to clear stock to allow for, okay, so we're on low stock on maybe our top products. Because again, in addition to having insane excess stock, you also have those SKUs that are selling through quickly. So you're trying to like rush in stock, and then the shipping, the check-in times are ridiculous. And so you're like trying to balance that out. And some of our conversations with brands were like, even if I sell through this stock, because the inventory restrictions are capping my account, it's not going to do me any good. Which now I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the inventory restrictions have started to stabilize a little bit, or seeing increases?
They eased out a little bit, and I think I know Amazon knows this, and I think one of the reasons they've been pushing Buy with Prime so much is to help sell through all the stock sitting at their warehouses. So I think they will, like if you have an e-commerce, you can just have a liquidation page and then add products with Buy with Prime. If you do decide to put that on your main products for a strategic reason, right, it's going to help the IPI scores on Amazon. My thoughts on that is that Amazon probably realized that running their fulfillment centers is more expensive than what they thought. So they're trying to shorten the cycle, the life cycle of inventory sitting at their warehouses. Maybe from, it used to be like a year, just get stock sitting there for a long time. Maybe now they want it to be on average from 90 to 60 days. So it's better to, if possible, to join them than to, what's the saying? If you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah, I would say that, I don't know about you, but that's what I'm seeing the platform move more towards, is the maturing of the platform, but also a necessity of the brand owners, or the business owners rather. It's not just the brand owners, there's like the business owners, to get more sophisticated, because there's a lot of things. It's like you should have a good pulse on your inventory, you should have a good pulse on your reorders, you should have a good pulse on like how your inventory is moving. And I know that there's certain things, like when Amazon does restrictions on their inventory, there's only so much you can do there. But the thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, at least for the past year, I know maybe even years prior, it's not abnormal to see inventory restrictions in Q4.
It's been there for us for a long time. It's had different shapes. It used to be that there's a cutout date where you just cannot send. If you're a new seller, you cannot send stock to FBA. So you have to launch your store as FBM Q4, to the 2020, 2021 years where it was a mess, right? It was stock limits. First, it was stock limits at the SKU level. Then they added at the account level, and a mix of both. I think this year, honestly, it's been a lot better. But yeah, I think Amazon is just moving away from slow-moving products. They realize probably in their business model that it's too big of a cost, which leads to advertising, right? Like I probably not everybody's favorite topic, taxes, right? But at the end of the day, taxes is a way to think about taxes is a cheat sheet from the government about what they want us to do, right? If they want us to, if the government wants housing, affordable housing, they'll incentivize you via taxes, tax breaks, and so on, right? So I think of Amazon the same way. Like, what do they want us to do? And one of the things is knowing that if we read a little bit about their moves in terms of their new services they're launching and products, a lot of that is logistics. A lot of that is having more control to shorten the amount of time the product sits at their warehouses. But I also think advertising, right? Like, they've been very prolific, probably as prolific as we've seen them in a while in releasing advertising products and features. So one interesting fact is a mature brand, we used to see the split between organic sales and PPC sales. For a mature brand, we used to see it a few years back, 40% of sales coming from PPC, 60 coming from organic, and then that worked out a profitable brand on Amazon. Today, I think that has shifted. We're seeing a little bit more of a 50-50, like the pay to play is stronger, and that translates into just more placements above the fold. Now, in some categories, there's just no organic above the fold. The ones that do have is probably one organic placement, so that we can find it, or simply taking advantage of all the ad products, especially the new ones. The new sponsored display video, the clicks will never be as cheap as they are right now for those that are listening. But curious what you're seeing about this from yourself.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I like the analogy of the taxes and trying to get a gauge for where Amazon is going. And I always think of it through the lens of, from my understanding, Amazon's goal is still to provide the best shopper experience. It makes sense for them to try and weed out tired old products that just don't move. If the market has already determined, I'm not interested in purchasing this, Amazon's always going to side with the shopper. They're not going to be like, oh crap, they have excess inventory, I feel bad, let me give them page one. It's never going to work like that. And I 100% agree with your assessment on I don't want to say saturated ads have become, but in a way, yes, at least how saturated the search page has become with ads. I would say that's valid. And it's similar to what we're seeing on the, again, ads to organic side. I audit brands all the time now. That's part of like our onboarding. I'm like, I'm not going to sign you unless I do an audit, because I don't want to tell you like, yeah, your numbers seem great. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into an account and I'm like, okay, so you told me this. This is what your report says. But yeah, that's definitely one thing we look at is like, all right, so how reliant are you on ads to drive sales? That is a very big assessment. I don't care what size your brand is. You want to be running that. Ideally, you want to be running that at a product level. If you've been advertising a product and your product is still heavily reliant on ads to drive sales, that means you don't have enough sales velocity to increase organic ranking. And then, that's a trigger that like something probably needs to fix, maybe in the conversion rate. Same thing. We used to be like, oh, you never want to be past 30%. If you're past 30%, or maybe 40, if you're like pushing ads, then you have a very unhealthy product. And now we have an issue. And now we're seeing that 50-50 is not abnormal. Like, we still have brands obviously running under that, but 50-50 doesn't scare me. And honestly, like, if you're pushing very aggressively, it's not that we want to push that up to 60%, but it's not as uncommon seeing that creep closer to a 60%, which is like more from ads. I'm talking about being super aggressive, pushing for rank, like that kind of scenario. You probably don't want to continuously run ads like that, but where, like you said, a couple of years ago, we would have said, oh, like, this is entirely unhealthy. This is unsustainable. Like, you can't, and it's become at the point where it's not scary. It's something to definitely keep an eye on it. If you see it continuously creep up, then there's most likely what we're seeing is a conversion rate issue, when you just have to keep pushing ads to drive any sales. And if you turn off ads or turn down ads, your products are nowhere to be found. That's a definite issue with more the product than the offer than it is like the actual ads not being efficient. Sometimes it's ad inefficiency. Not always. If you're confident in what you're doing with your ad strategy and you're not seeing those organic results, and that at that point, what we've seen is like, hey, maybe go double check the offer. Make sure, it's resonating with the market like you think it should be. And if it is resonating with the market, you should see that organic lift.
Yeah, when it comes to ads, I mean, a very pragmatic way is if you're selling a garlic press and you're getting clicks for the search term. Let's say it's a stainless steel garlic press. It's not super generic, but it's also not super long tail. It's like in a healthy middle, right, of search volume and relevancy. If you're getting clicks for that and you're converting below average to your overall conversion rate for that product, then something is off, right? Now, and this is something that I shared in other talks, is now Amazon is giving us the tools with
Yeah.
the search query performance and brand analytics to actually, we do this for clients to figure out what the conversion rate for the per keyword, for the organic conversion rate per keyword is. And we could say that PPC conversion rate will be a little bit lower than organic conversion rate. But if you're way too below that, then that product is just not going to have enough punch to be a candidate for top of page one or at least somewhere in page one. Very pragmatically, we're quick at just qualifying or disqualifying products. There's two things. I want to say one thing and then I want to ask you a question. So the thing I want to say is, I think Amazon knows about the CPC numbers rising. And I think that's why they've been so prolific in adding new placements, new places to get impressions to battle that CPC increase. Because if CPCs increase so high that nobody's able to make a profit, then it becomes a commodity, right? Nothing moves, and the ones at the top just cannibalize each other. So that's because of that. Just to share something actionable, is as soon as a new ad product gets launched, the best time to implement it is right away, because then a lot of people will join and that will bring it back up. So right now that is sponsored display video. This one that they launched in New York at the Amazon Box event that I actually went to.
Yeah.
Best thing by Amazon, they brought the Killers.
Yeah.
They had a concert that was fun. So that ad product, and then for us, what's been the best ROI ad placement or ad targeting we saw in Q4 was the views remarketing. And that was for our own products, so on a defensive standpoint, and on an offensive standpoint, the views remarketing for similar competitor product. It did very well. Now there's no clarity that helps ranking. It doesn't. So we were just running them with pure ROI in mind, and it did perform. I'm curious at what you've seen. What's been if we slice each different segment targeting, which one you've seen perform very well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Which one? And so that's the thing is, okay, is it across the board? Is it per account? Because what we've seen is, so for instance, the sponsor brands video directed to store page getting top of search. Super awesome, amazing click-through rates, oftentimes amazing conversion rates. But what we've found is if a brand is not already strong on the top of search placement, you're not going to do well with that ad type. So if you already have like very strong sponsored brands, headline, top of search. I was just talking to one of my account managers today. I'm like, hey, there's a report inside of the ad console. You can see placements for sponsored brand ads. Go download that, go see what campaigns are doing well, top of search and placement. And like, hey, maybe use whatever is contained in that as like a candidate for running these ad types. I would say across the board, the more specific you can get to what the shopper is looking for, the better you will perform, regardless of ad type. The things that I've seen not perform well are when people are going out and trying to do targeting that like on search pages that they really just don't fit on. Now, I will say the caveat to that is I have seen if you perform very crappy on search pages, like you were saying, like maybe it's stainless steel garlic press and you're just like, you cannot compete on there. Sometimes if you go, we've done like Hail Marys before when it's like, we cannot get this product to convert, like the market's too saturated, it's ridiculous. Like sometimes if you can show up on pages where you're the only one or whatever you are. So I'm trying to think like maybe stainless steel kitchen tools. Probably a lot of stainless steel garlic presses on that search page. Sometimes you can like maybe stand out just because you're different. That doesn't always work. Don't quote me on it. If you need a Hail Mary on a product that's not converting for specific searches, you can try that. But yeah, that's what I've seen. And that's what we've been niching down into more as an ad agency has been it's almost like how can we do the things we know we should be doing and try and find ways to do them at scale. So we know we should be running specific like ranking keywords and like you were saying, like evaluating your search query reports. Where do I convert better than my market? Where can I niche down into? That's something we should be doing on all of our products. it's very hard to do it at scale because it's a very manual process. So yeah, just trying to be like, as we go into, like I said, it's a more competitive landscape. We just have to get really savvy. And it's just doing all the reps that we know we should be doing, analyzing our search term reports, making sure we're retargeting those consistently, looking at ad types, testing them for specific products, analyzing whether they work well or not, and iterating based on our findings. Like, we all know we should be doing it. We all should be doing it, but are you doing it at scale? Unfortunately, like for us, it's just something that's just taken a heck of a ton of grunt work. So we've tried to position ourselves in a way that we just have excess amounts of time per brand to get it done. And so we've just done it that way. With new maybe innovations in tools or other things, I think there's ways that we can start to do, again, just everything that we know we should be doing, but at a grander scale.
Yeah, taking advantage of the new data that Amazon is giving us is what every brand should be doing now. It's become now it's so not a secret anymore.
Yeah.
How you convert, how organic converts, how your competitors convert. Like back to my silver liner I shared
Yeah.
earlier, Amazon has this report that we want to look at for basically each brand, each client for their niches. It's called a Product Opportunity Explorer.
Yes, that's awesome.
And what Amazon is now sharing there is how many new products were launched in the last 180 days, I think it is. And then they're telling us how many of those new products were successful. And the criteria they have for successful is if you reached $50,000 in sales for one product. So that is interesting because there are some niches where there is products being launched and none of them are being successful. And there is niches where 10 were launched and 5 were successful. So where do you want to put in your effort?
Yeah.
You want to go for a niche where products are winning, right? So that's exciting. At the same time, I think we're seeing also which brands existed a few months ago that don't exist anymore, right? That drop off, that's the good news. That's what we want to track because I think this whole CPC rising situation will, to some extent, improve, correct, once a lot of the oversupply product leaves or just never restocks. But yeah, it's almost for the owner of a small brand, even for us, it's a lot of work. It takes time and everything. But for somebody running a brand that's running Facebook, Amazon, Walmart, their website, social media, it's just impossible to be able to go through all the new data that Amazon is giving us. Is absolutely necessary to study, right? But almost, this is my biased thing to say, but almost makes a case to having an expert that is not just spending the time, but also has the experience to make the decisions from that.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I too am like insanely excited about the new insights. I'm really glad you mentioned comparing yourself to competitors because that was a question, I don't know about you, we got a lot. It was like, hey, how am I doing? And this was before we had brand metrics in the ad console. I think that was the first real rollout of how are you doing versus the category. But we would get those questions all the time. Hey, how am I? So you could go through and maybe track your rank versus your competitors, but did you get all the top competitors? Are those the really ones you should be benchmarking yourselves against? There was a ton of I don't know variables that made it very difficult to say, yes, you are doing better than your competition. No, you are lagging behind the competition. And I think what we've seen is Amazon open its data doors and say, hey, we want you to better, because you have better conversion rates. It means the market is reacting better to your product versus your competition. That's really what it means. So Amazon, it is in their best interest if they want to have a good shopper experience to give you insights and highlight on, hey, this is where are you converting better? And if you're not, then you know that's something that should be corrected. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And yeah, with the cost per clicks, I'm trying to think when it was, I think it was like 2019. I'm like, when the world went crazy and everything shut down, that was the first time in years we had seen a lowering of cost per clicks. And it was because people were shutting down their ads. And so the fun fact that I like to say a lot is Amazon doesn't say, hey, this keyword's super valuable, so therefore I'm going to charge you $4 a click. Like it's an auction. So unless your competition thinks it's valuable to pay $4 a click, it's not going to be that high. So when a lot of the market, like you were saying, drops off or just realizes it's not worth it for me to continuously pump money into something that I've been backwards on for a long time, then you maybe this year we'll see an easing of cost per clicks. I'm not entirely holding my breath, but I can see a scenario in which that might be a possibility. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. I would say the ad budget allocation, right, used to be, I think we're coming from a place where it used to be like, oh, I'm just running PPC, and as long as I get certain ROAS, then unlimited budget. How many times have you heard
Oh
from
my God.
clients, unlimited
So many
budget?
times. If you can fix this for me, I will triple it.
Where I think a lot of those, for most products, for most keywords, niches, a lot of those days are long gone. We're in a place where it should be a macro KPI of the famous tackles, right? Or true ROAS
Yeah.
at the account level. Simply because if you are too myopic on PPC, you could have a killer PPC performance, but then your store as a whole is just tanking,
Yeah.
right? Simply because you're not able to sustain rankings and all of that. So I think for a lot of people out there that are maybe marketing directors or in charge of marketing at their brands or growth, right, is shifting paradigms from being narrow focused. Like rather, or at this point, a lot what we see is to win on Amazon, PPC should be the engine of growth, not a place where you're simply just going after ROI, right? Because you're gonna get none. I can count products with my two hands that are able to run profitable PPC and thrive also organically. And usually those products are something that is patented or protected or backed by a brand that spends millions of dollars on branding. So things that are just not that your average brand, CPG brand trying to grow, it's not going to be able, it doesn't have access to. So focusing on the macro strategy, because then that way we get a budget for the client, right? We do projections for the 12 months ahead, and then we're able to say, okay, this is the budget for each month of ad spend. And then we can go even deeper than that. It's where, okay, we're going to allocate maybe 50% of that budget to sponsor products for this quarter. And then we're going to allocate 25% to sponsor brands, which gets you a little bit more, maybe new to brand type of traffic, middle of the funnel, top of the funnel. And then maybe that 25% remaining, we're going to split it into some remarketing and maybe a little bit of Google Ads to Amazon to drive Google Ads attribution. Now, 5 years ago, I would have said, let's just run PPC, you know, and unlimited budget, right? But today, it has to be holistic. It has to be, I think, a mature marketer will know that, okay, this is maybe break even on my PPC or ACOS is here, but that is driving the big picture, right? My account as a whole maybe is growing at a 5.0 ROAS, 6.0 ROAS, maybe 8.0 ROAS on some of the best case scenarios, right? That's a little bit of how we approach it with clients that I think has been very well received.
Yeah, I can see how it is. Those are the conversations I'm trying to have more with brand owners, is not approaching it from, okay, you know, what we ask, what's your target ACOS, what's your target total ACOS, what's your break even? You need to know that stuff. Like I was saying, like, even if this is somewhat fluid, we need a benchmark. I mean, at least somewhere to start. But I'm trying to have more sophisticated conversations around, what are your actual business goals? What are you trying to achieve with your Amazon business? Is it that you've been struggling with profits? And then, okay, I need to look at ads through the lens of profits. And when you tell me, like, I want to run this new beta ad type and I want to throw all these ad dollars on it, then I, as somebody who better understands your business goals, can go, that doesn't make sense for your brand and what you're trying to accomplish for your business. Or when you tell me that you're super growth focused and you want to be super aggressive and this is the year that you want to scale your brand, when you start telling me like, oh, ACOS is too high, I'll say total ACOS is good, and you've told me that these are your brand goals. If your brand goals have changed, that's fine, but we need to look at ads through the lens of, this is a piece of your business and I can help you with this piece of your business, but you as the maybe brand owner or brand manager or business owner really need to really sit down and say, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here? And then allow your agency providers, specialists that you've had on your account, say, okay, this is my goal. We need to collectively figure out, how do I hit this goal? And then what your provider should do is, okay, let me add context. Like maybe your goal is unrealistic, or maybe super growth is realistic, but given your current catalog, that might not make sense and that might not be achievable. So then maybe we can add context on, okay, if you want super growth, maybe you should launch more products for your brand. But again, what we give is we give the context. And like you were saying, digging into all the new reports and geeking out on all the new figures, like you were saying, delving into Product Opportunity Explorer is amazing. You can go down a rabbit hole. You can spend the entire day in that system, come out with some insane insights. But it's helpful sometimes, like you as a brand owner should be aware of the tools out there. But oftentimes, like you said, there's other things you should be doing to grow your business. And it may not be sitting in Product Opportunity Explorer for 2 days trying to figure it out.
Right. So what is obviously the result? You're going to hate me for this question, right? But because there's many variables, but what is for a new product launch and a product that is being just as a hero product, what's going to be a hero product? What budget do you require from a client where if the client is not willing to do that budget, you have to have the conversation, hey, look, this is just not going to work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So historically, I've hated projection models, mostly because it relies on so many things being constant that we know are not constant. Oh, I'm going to do this and conversion rate's going to remain the same. Is it though? But I've been trying to do more of those models, just looking at potential scenarios. So a common one, like very easy one for me is, like you said, backtracking it to total aid costs. So given this ad spend, given where we are now, if a client comes to me and says, oh, we have our hero product and we want to grow our hero product, and they give me an ad budget that is lower than what they're currently spending, because you can say, okay, so our current total aid cost target is 12% maybe. So you do 12% of the total sales volume, and then wait, the budget you gave me is lower than that 12%, but we're growth focused. So maybe that budget doesn't make sense given what we're already running, and we're already achieving this with what we have. So therefore, it makes sense that we would need to push it a little bit further. And ideally, organic growth catches up to that. But that takes time. You can't expect the results of organic growth after day one. Now, I always tell clients, I'm like, if we have a growth projection that we're working towards, it's not like we say, oh, it's going to take 30 days. We're not going to wake up on day 30 and all of a sudden it happened. You will be able to track along the way. Is this working? Is this not working? And make micro adjustments. But you still need to be willing to wait it out as you work through, is what we're doing working. So I don't know if my numbers are normally like percentages of total type, like ratios of, okay, what we're doing, what we're projecting. I'm working on some other models. It's okay if you look at like ad sale percentages and backtracking that into total growth, looking at it. I'm really enjoying looking at things from a session perspective these days, because it's like growth from the ad side comes from additional sessions. And whether or not those sessions translate to sales does sort of come into play with the ads when you mean, are we driving effective traffic? Because if we drive crap traffic, like we're not going to see the sales growth we need, even if we're increasing in sessions significantly. But providing we're doing good with our targeting, how is that tracking into sessions? And that's where we, as someone who's running ads, can leverage growth for the brand. It's actually not the conversions, and it's not even like the sales, because that's what's your price set at. If you go and you drop your sales or drop your sale price 50% today, you're probably actually going to increase your total aid cost numbers because you're making like 50% less on each order. And so yeah, just puzzling through that, and like I'll do the back end of the equation, because like I said, that's a whole lot of like interesting variables and projection models. So when a client comes to me like, okay, this is what I want to achieve, what we do is we go back and we're like, okay, this is what you're doing. This is what we puzzled through. This is what we're working on. Okay, so let me go through the scenario you asked me and say, well, this is what you're trying to achieve. This is what it takes to get there. And we sometimes meet in the middle. And I always tell clients, I'm like, the budget question can be an ongoing discussion if needed. Like if we're achieving goals, okay, can we push it further because we're super profitable? Yes, no, maybe. We sometimes have that leverage. It depends on who we're working with. If it's a brand manager, then like they're getting the budgets from somebody else, so there's only so much that they can do. Oftentimes, if we're talking to the brand owner, then that conversation can be much more ongoing, and they have more comfort levels to actually like make those decisions.
I've learned that people love a number.
Yes.
People just need a number.
Yes.
We caveat that with, look, obviously it's a benchmark. You probably now, with all the brands that you manage, you can benchmark stuff out. Or else, I think for a new hero product being launched, there is a multiple criteria that we look in terms of USP and price. And a lot of people don't like this, but Amazon is very price sensitive.
Yeah.
Marketplace. If you selling very high-end stuff for much higher price, like Etsy, for example, tends to have a more tolerance to that. So anyway, once we run that criteria, I think we really recommend at least $3,000 ad spend a month for the advertiser for us to be able to do our work. And that's going to generate sales, it's going to generate revenue. But at the beginning, it's really understanding that the very first dollars you spend is to validate you're getting, benchmark your conversion rates, right? What kind of conversion rates you're getting. Then with that number, you can build actual projections. And then and Amazon in general, really, this is a year, I think, of just business fundamentals, where you have your projections and then you run the month and then you compare actual versus projected and then calibrate as you go. Sometimes the conversion rate is just not there.
Yeah.
Sometimes the CPC 50% higher than what had been expected. And we don't look at much at the suggested bids from Amazon. And at the end of the day, when you get your own data, you realize that there's many different opinions about this, right? We just don't find it that much helpful.
Yeah.
But we do like to give a number, and it's obviously becoming more long term, right? A bad client for us or somebody we wouldn't work with is focused on get rich quick, or not approaching this as a business, rather approaching this as unfortunately, a lot of courses out there teach, right? Amazon is passive income. It's not multi-month, sometimes multi-year strategies to get to profitability or to good size market share. It's always about just being realistic.
Yeah.
You and I probably spend many millions of dollars in ad spend. So we really know what works, what it looks like, and just better to tell to people up front.
Yeah. And I would say that launch budget, I would say it's probably roughly average to what we're seeing too. I think that makes a launch budget. And I like you were saying, I think that's the value of just doing a lot of reps is like, I can say here that budget, I would say that's about average, probably where we end up too. Where if I had no idea or hadn't touched enough brands, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you that. So again, I agree with you. To bring it back full circle, 2023 is definitely going to be the year of brands getting, or out of necessity, really, getting more savvy. Like I've probably said this on quite a few podcasts. It's like you always should have been running a tight business. Like you always should have had your inventory under control. You always should have understood your profit margin. You always should have understood building a brand. But back when maybe costs weren't so high or there was a lot more margin to play with, you could afford to fudge a lot of things. Versus now, like you really should know like your to the cent numbers. Absolutely. Instead of being like, it's roughly this, because right now, a couple points one way or the other make a lot bigger difference than you think.
It's that Warren Buffett saying that, or Charlie Munger, one of the two, that when the tide goes down, you see who was swimming naked. I think it's something.
That's a good saying. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a year of I think excellence in operation.
Yeah, I would agree. And the silver, like you were saying, silver lining, I know we've been like, you have to get more savvy and like you got to put in the work, which is true. The good news, I got asked the question the other day, like, what's the problem with Amazon? And I'm like, honestly, Amazon doesn't have a problem. Like they are growing, their marketplace is growing year over year. The amount of people who are Prime shoppers, and again, like you said, the buy with Prime options now, like they're definitely expanding their consumer base. So it's not being on Amazon is a bad place to be when it comes to generating business sales. It's just, if you're going to fight for your piece of the pie, it's a little bit harder fight these days.
Yeah, and maybe it's not that it was easier before, and now it's hard, but maybe now it's normal. Now it's just a normal business conditions, no? Like in a restaurant business. And people are making money in the restaurant business today. Yeah. It's just that you just need to know, like the mechanics just need to be good, and obviously the branding and so Amazon is probably just that, right? Like It's no longer the place where without knowledge, without expertise, you could just throw something at the wall and then make money,
Yeah.
which is not what you want to expect, because that also led to brands to grow.
Mhm.
And as the environment got harder, right, they lost it. They didn't, weren't able to sustain their growth simply because it was like penny on a thread.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now it's really back to normal business conditions. You want to have a good product that's well priced, and you want to have something that differentiates you, and you want to have a brand that people can remember and want to talk about. And then the operations, the execution, the strategy just need to be top notch. And tooting my own horn here, it's you and I spend, and our teams all together must spend hundreds of hours combined per day looking at data, looking at what works, looking at what doesn't. And the truth is, somebody running a brand or somebody marketing a brand that is not hyper specialized, we're gonna eat them for lunch. So it's almost going for somebody that is like matching the level of input that we have. Is the only way to do that is going through a service provider as the reps, the amount of hours in 10,000 hours in. When did you get your 10,000 hours?
Yeah.
How long ago?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that assessment. This has been absolutely fabulous. I really appreciate the conversation. I love having these conversations, and hopefully the audience is able to walk away with some insights onto maybe how they should think about going into 2023.
Yeah, I think we'll leave the edgy ones for next time.
Definitely, we'll hit those up next time.